So I'm now going to introduce our first guest speaker, David Robinson from the Relationships Project. He might be familiar to many of you. David has had an amazing career, spent more than 50 years as a community worker. Back in 1977, apparently while still at school, he co-founded Community Links in East London, which went on to become one of the UK's largest voluntary organisations. He's advised prime ministers, he chaired the world's first social impact bond project, and he's been knighted for his contribution to communities. But what really defines David is a single idea that he keeps coming back to in everything that he does, which is that relationships are the bedrock of everything that matters. And that simple but radical belief is what gave birth to the Relationships Project, which he founded and continues to lead today. David's going to talk to us about what it really means to put relationships first. So please give a very warm welcome to Sir David Robinson.
Thank you, Anna. It's lovely to be here amongst you this morning, and thank you for having me. As Anna said, it is 52 years ago this week, to be precise, that a bunch of us at school together raised £360 and we bought an old double-decker bus. We sold the seats, we used the money to buy some games, some sports equipment, and we recruited some volunteer drivers from Plaistow Bus Garage because we were too young to drive this thing. And they would take it to different sites at evenings and weekends in our part of East London. And from the bus, we would run children's and youth sessions on a very regular basis. Typically, 120, 140 kids would turn up at those sessions. Parents got involved, relationships developed. And you know, I don't know who would close us down first if we tried to do that today. It certainly wouldn't last very long. The bus was very, very basic. But we learnt. And the big thing I learned, I think, was that success wasn't about the thing. It was about the people that it brought together and the relationships between us. And now I've worked on many issues since then. Many things I thought I knew at 17, I find much more difficult today. But of this, I am ever more certain. Relationships are the foundations of everything that matters. And if we just sort of tick them off in our heads for a moment together. Stable childhoods, safe and thriving communities, effective healthcare, successful education, just policing. In all these things, our relationships are the glitter and the glue, the cause of problems when we get them wrong, and the master key when they work well. Unlocking solutions, potential, trust, confidence. In the home, across and within the communities in which we live, with and between the agencies on whom we depend. Focusing on building meaningful connection is not one more intervention, vying for scarce resources. It is how we do our best work, how we prevent problems, or how we stop them from escalating. And if that work involves, for example, multiple disadvantage or family breakdown, social unrest or social isolation, relationships are the work. There's no other way. Now, I know that very many of you here today are grappling with huge financial challenges, but I believe very deeply that progress is achievable even in these tough times because we are spending money and time on things which are at best suboptimal. Reflecting on his career in government, DEFRA Permanent Secretary Paul Kissack said, so many of the public services we were working on, we were trying to patch up tears in the social fabric. We were building services where relationships should be. Now, of course, none of my mates or I knew none of this in 1975. We were kids doing what came naturally. but we all know it now. We have evidence, we have experience, not least in this wonderful room, and we have the wisdom of people like Paul. And yet, still we work, overwhelmingly we work in a siloed world, inexplicably prizing part system efficiencies over whole society effectiveness, hitting narrow targets but missing the point. And too much hope is pinned on machines built to behave like people and people trained to behave like machines. Transactional processes and all kinds of tech can brilliantly and essentially release the time we need for real relationships, but they are enablers, not a whizzy alternative. My point is this: our systems and our organizations are ill set to meet the needs of today, let alone the challenges of the next generation. And we really, really, really could do so much better. Now, I know many of you need absolutely no persuading. Relational practice increasingly valued, especially in this audience. But still, too much work on the ground, not all, but too much, is perched perilously on the edge. One term, one place wonders. Way more sophisticated, but little more embedded than our old bus. So the question for us, and my question for you, is what would we do if we meant it? Now, I work for the Relationships Project, and we think that any serious attempt to center relationships must both harness the power of the state and seek to reform it in fundamental ways. We think we must double down in 3 dimensions. First, relational services. Enabling and cultivating effective relationships between service providers and recipients should be the common and central operating principle across the front line, from social work to urban planning, healthcare to policing. Trusting relationships are the mechanism by which change is achieved, says Russ Bellini, the principal social worker embarking in Dagenham. They don't just enable other interventions, they are the interventions. They should be the default. Second, relationship-centered policy. Policy that supports relationships between people and within communities, and that unleashes the power of social capital. Anna mentioned it a moment ago. Social capital, our greatest natural resource. The Homes for Ukraine program is a recent example, matching Ukrainian refugees with UK residents. Its program director, lifetime civil servant Paul Morrison, said, "A relational approach to public policy recognizes that change happens through networks of people and organizations, not through issuing directives." We should ask of every policy, how does it contribute to and draw solutions from those networks? Third, relational governance. Enabling collaborative decision-making between public servants and citizens draws on experiences and voices that would be otherwise unheard. Genuine relational governance arrangements in the UK are a bit thin on the ground at the moment, but Pride in Place and Test, Learn and Grow programs offer real promise. These 3, building relational services, cultivating relationships within communities, and anchoring our governance structures in mutual understanding and respect. These 3 are all important, and not only at the points of delivery, but also equally important in the systemic drivers, in consultation and planning, commissioning, reporting and audit, recruitment, appraisal, training, especially training. Everything matters. Do it all, and meaningful relationships can change how we live together, how we work, care, learn, govern, organize, and lead. They can become the means and the end of public policy, the root and the flower. And this is where I want us to be. But friends, we're on a slow train. I was there when Blair made the Aylesbury speech, promising to liberate funds from government silos, and talking about so much of what we will be talking about today. That was 1997. It really is time to accelerate. We in this hall do many things, but the common thread running through community-powered approaches to service provision, to decision-making, also to bridge building and community mediation, to youth work, to faith organizing, participatory democracy, neighborhood-centered public sector reform, community asset ownership, and countless other forms of civic practice. The common thread is that deep-seam recognition that relationships are not peripheral to social renewal, they are its foundations. These ideas are not random, disconnected fads, and we are more than insurgents in a petrified system. Together, we prefigure a time when relationships between people will characterize our statecraft, local and national, just as surely as relationships between people and the state characterized the post-war settlement, and then relationships between people and the market became the organizing principle. I believe we are the mavens, the architects of that third era. And that's what we should be shooting for, to be the dominant orthodoxy, the central operating principle, the soul of the system, the third era. Can it be done? Can it be done now? Well, I'm a community worker, and community workers without optimism is like a plumber without a wrench. So yes, of course I'm optimistic, but I am also a realist. If many of our most pressing crises are the product of disconnection, distrust, and the hollowing out of collective life, then reknitting the social fabric must surely be a central purpose in government, local and national, and in the wider community. I've spent a lifetime working out from the margins, and this may be a heresy here, but friends, I don't want to be a rebel anymore. Most importantly, it's not what I want for you. I want you in the mainstream, living that central purpose, services, policy, and governance, being the new soul of the system. I work for the Relationships Project because I believe that in this time of fracture, rapid transition, this is the movement the moment demands. Along with partners, we're helping to share the skills we need with the new Relational Practice Academy. Do talk to me later if you'd like to know more. My convictions are 52 years in the making. Nothing holds more influence or more hope than our relationships with one another. This is how we do our best work, how we improve lives. And rather wonderfully, it is in the nature of the mission that every one of us, not just in this hall, but every one of us has a part to play. We can learn new practices, remodel protocol and context, put relationships first. We can embed the shift in our organizations and our systems. We have the knowledge here in this room, the experience and the exemplars. We can change how we live together. Let's get a wiggle on to stronger things.